Hey, welcome to Cheaper Jeeper TV. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about a few quirky things to watch out for when buying a Jeep Wrangler JL. Stick around. Hey, welcome to Cheaper Jeeper TV. I'm Dino, your host. Glad to see you here. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about a few quirky things that I've learned about in my Jeep Wrangler JL ownership experience. The Jeep Wrangler JL came out in 2018 and I bought myself one, drove it for about 200,000 kilometers and had it for a few years, and I learned a few things that would come important if you were looking at buying one. Let's get started. Well, for starters, there's the windshield defrost issue. If you're looking at buying a used one, or as I did when I was looking at buying this new one, I tested the front windshield defroster to make sure that the air wasn't just coming up in the middle like some of the earlier Jeeps were plagued with, but in fact when I tested this one, the defrost was in fact blowing up even in front of the driver, which of course would be desirable. So if you're looking at buying a JL, new or used, make sure you test this out. Otherwise you have to live with some of the hacks as covered in this video as well as this video. And while you're here, of course, make sure that the windshield doesn't have any chips out of it or that sort of thing. And another quirky thing to watch out for when buying a Jeep Wrangler JL is the rear window defrost connections, because right up here at the top of the windshield are two connections that seem to be soldered to the windshield and they power the defrost wires. Now on my Wrangler JL, I went through about 4 repairs in this, and if you look at the Wrangler forums, you'll see lots of people encounter this. So make sure those are still connected before you buy yourself a Jeep Wrangler JL. And another thing to think about, if you thought you'd save some money by just buying a Jeep that has a soft top now and you think you might upgrade to a hard top later, well, if it was just a Jeep that didn't come with the hardtop, it won't have the wiring for the defroster or the tube for the washer. One of those quirky things to keep in mind. And next, let's have a look down here. Another thing that I noticed on my JL were the very poor quality of welds on the frame, and even the track bar had a recall, and my Jeep fell under that recall where they had to inspect the welds to see if they had to be repaired under warranty. So if you look on some of these forum images, some of the early JLs had really poor quality welds, that they were bubbling and the paint was spalling off, and it kind of left you feeling that it might not hold up very well in the long run. So when you're looking at a Jeep Wrangler JL, get underneath and check all the frame welds. I did when I was buying this Jeep, and by 2024 I guess they figured it all out because the frame welds were very nice. So a quirky thing to look out for when you're looking to buy a Jeep Wrangler JL. Okay, we're still not done underneath. Let's have a look under here. Okay, again, looking up under here, we're just underneath the engine at the front of the Jeep, and you can see there was a recall on steering dampers for the JL. So if you buy one, you want to make sure that that's looked after. But one of the most important quirky things that occurred on the JL was the replacement of the steering box right up here. Now the earlier ones were aluminum, and Jeep had put out a technical service bulletin to replace those. Now a lot of people didn't know about it and they've traded in their Jeep, and that steering box may still be the aluminum one. It's like a silvery color, and the steel one that was supposed to replace it is a black color. And some people reported in on the forums that it had helped with the steering. So just a quirky thing to make sure you check out when buying a Jeep Wrangler JL. Now another quirky thing to watch out for when buying a Wrangler JL is the corrosion issue. Now I have done a couple of videos about that. I've also mentioned there's a new Facebook group that can help people who have questions about that. And I just want to explain it isn't just a hinge issue, because people are finding corrosion along the leading edges of doors, the hood, the windshield frame, that sort of thing. And it might not be an issue if you're buying a new Wrangler JL, but if you're looking at buying a used one, make sure you're aware of that quirky issue and check out if it exists on that Jeep that you're checking out, or if it had been repaired, because you should know that even people who've had it repaired, including myself, it has come back within a year. So it's definitely a quirky thing to be aware of if buying a Wrangler JL. And interestingly, another quirky thing that I've noticed on some Jeep Wrangler JLs, whether they're new or used or on the road or in the dealer lot, some of them have door alignment issues. So check out this top corner right here, because you'll see brand new Wrangler JLs on the lot where this door is pushed in a little bit and this part of the roof is sitting proud. Now this is an issue if you're on trails or on the highway and there's a lot of sand being blown past the side of your Jeep. If this part is sticking out and not flush with the door, then you'll probably get some damage occurring here. So you'll see some Jeeps where this is flush and some where this door is pushed in a little bit. Another quirky thing if you're looking at buying a Wrangler JL. So another quirky thing that I've just learned about recently about Wrangler JLs, if you have the 8.4-inch Uconnect screen, they've been known to start to peel and delaminate, and when that happens, a lot of its functionality gets shot as well. So if you're looking at buying one, check out the screen very carefully to see if it's starting to happen. Another surprising thing that I've also been learning about is the window switches down here are starting to rot and wear away, which is very unusual, and I think it might be happening because people using those hand sanitizer gels and everything may have alcohol in them, and it may be breaking down the rubber. So there are some covers, believe it or not, for those window switches I'll have up here on the screen, and I'll have a link to them in the description section in case you want to do something about that. But check out that if you're looking at a Wrangler JL. Another quirky thing about a Wrangler JL would be the 8-speed automatic ZF transmission. Let me explain to you under here. Okay, I'm underneath the Jeep, and what I'm pointing at right here is the bottom of the transmission. This is the transmission pan which holds the transmission fluid, and there's the refill port right here. Now, unlike many other transmissions, there's no dipstick, so maintaining this is a little bit tricky, and what Jeep says is you do not have to maintain this for the life of the vehicle. Although ZF transmissions that manufactures this do have a maintenance interval. Now this is my new Wrangler JL. I plan to service this transmission. However, if you're buying a used one, you may want to determine based on how many miles are on it if you wanted to service it yourself so that it would last as long as you want to keep the Jeep. Sometimes you might buy one that has many miles on it and they may be past the service interval, and you might not actually be able to service it after that time. So just a little quirky thing to be aware of when you're looking at a Wrangler JL. And now that is dealing with the 8-speed automatic transmission. But if you're looking at buying a Wrangler JL that has the manual, well, the earlier years had significant issues with their manual transmission, for which there's been a long period for recalls. And if you're looking at buying a manual transmission on a Wrangler JL, make sure the recall's been done. Now, another quirky thing about buying a Wrangler JL is if you buy one that has significant mods done to it. If it's got a heavy steel bumper on the front, new heavy bigger tires, a heavy winch on the front? How might all of that have impacted things like the airbag sensors or the spring rates of the stock springs now that you've added all those extra things? And were they done properly? So these are things that you should be careful of when you're buying a Wrangler JL that has significant mods. Now, another quirky thing when it comes to buying a Jeep Wrangler JL, or any vehicle for that matter, is the reputation of the dealership where you're going to buy your Jeep or go to have it serviced. You can't always go on those online reviews. You're going to have to go in and go with your gut feeling, see how they treat you and that sort of thing, because I've read all kinds of things online and experienced myself of how things get done properly or not. So it's in that light that I have this week's tip for you. Now for some cheaper Jeeper tips. For this week's tip, I just want to encourage those of you who buy a Jeep Wrangler JL to consider looking at the Jeep Wrangler JL playlist of maintenance items that I've made, because on my Jeep Wrangler, I did all the maintenance myself. You can see here a list of all the maintenance items that I showed how you could do, and I'm not a mechanic, and I just encourage you to refer to these for reference and education and discussion purposes. For anything really difficult, I would encourage you to consult a mechanic, but I did all these, and in this video I showed how I saved thousands of dollars in maintenance on my own Jeep. And with the money you save, you could buy more things for your Jeep. And if you're not interested in doing it yourself, you could at least check them out and you can see what's behind it, so that if you do take it to a dealership and they talk to you about some of the things, you'll be a little bit informed. Hey, that's it for this week's episode of Cheaper Jeeper TV. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found it interesting. If you did, how about giving the video a thumbs up? And until next week, I'm Bino for Cheaper Jeeper TV. Be well, stay safe, take care.